Welcome to the most boring conversation this evening, talking about XML. So, just a bit of background around what I'm going to show you tonight and the reasons why I ended up doing what I've done. I don't have a love for XML, but the historical context for this is there is a PowerShell module out there called Scribo for generating documentation in PowerShell. And as part of that module, it can output Word documents, okay? And historically, I was working, has anyone heard of Carl Webster and his documentation scripts for Active Directory and things? So I was trying to teach Carl a more efficient way of doing, his PowerShell coding, all that sort of stuff. So I knocked up an example, and that example was just grown and grown. He grew up into his own module, etc. Because he does a lot of work in US government institutions, there could be no reliance on any kind of third-party software, DLLs, all that sort of stuff. So to generate Word documents, his current solution is you've got to run on a machine that's got Word installed and it's using COM objects and all sorts to drive Word behind the scenes. So I said, it's just an XML document, right? Unfortunately, I don't know if you know this, but I know a lot more about Excel than I did before I started. So historically, well, not historically, but within PowerShell, it's quite easy to read in an XML document. And we've all seen you create a here string, and here's my XML document, and I'm going to put everything I need within that here string, within PowerShell, and I can save it as an XML file. And I'm going to be able to do a little bit of find and replace to chop stuff out. But if I was to open up, this is just an example document that's generated with the Scribo module, right? So I'm going to show the XML file for a document that generates a table of contents, and just some example lines of different paragraph formatting. Right? It's not difficult. There's tables in there and all sorts. So having to not reverse engineer, because it's actually an open standard, so you can go and find out how to write all of this XML code for to generate a Word document. But ultimately, it ends up, we're generating hundreds, thousands of lines of XML, right? And not only that, it's not just one XML document, there are multiple XML documents within a docx file, because it's just a zip file. Yeah? So to generate this stuff in PowerShell, it's not the end of the world. I'll just show you the Scribo module. I'll just load this up. We're working with native .NET objects. So within the code, so if I was to look at Word, for instance. So here's what the code, in fact, let me show you this. It's probably a better way of doing it. So if I was to look at the code, source code, so this is the published modules up on GitHub. It's also in the gallery as well. So if I just go private, outward, internal. So if I was to do raw, let's make this a bit bigger. Okay. So, we're doing things like, I could copy into IC a bit better, but, we're appending objects to elements within the XML document. And if you want to set attributes, you've got to set the attributes. And then you've got to be careful of namespaces. If you look within this XML document, there are loads of namespaces, and there's prefixes all over the place. So let me zoom in on that as well. I haven't got a mouse wheel. Yeah, don't work. No number pad. Right. So as you can see, within here, there are a whole load of prefixes to all of these XML elements. So there's like the W prefix, the namespace within the document. But there are loads of them, depending on whether you're working with images, when you work, just loads of them. They're all documented, but you try coding this in PowerShell, and you end up with a whole world of pain, you know, that's doing this whole, you know, setting attributes, you know, here's my namespace, and then I want to put, you know, paragraph style, and there's runs and run styles and paragraph styles and all sorts that need to be doing. So there's just, but that is just a nightmare to read. Who knows what that code's doing, right? You try and reverse engineer that from within Scribo to work out how the document's generated, you just end up with a big old mess. I've replaced a lot of the code with the XML stuff. So here you go, so like table stuff, right? So here, you're generating table layouts. Zoom in a bit. Ooh, there we go. Yeah. So it's just a big old nightmare. Yeah. And Scribo can obviously output into text documents. It can do HTML documents as well. But I ran into a real issue with the XML stuff. It's just ugly. Yeah. So there's got to be a better way. So the way that Scribo works is it's kind of its own DSL. So you can define a document and you can add sections, you can add paragraphs and tables and all that sort of stuff. I could do a session on that if that's of interest in the future. So it creates its own kind of DSL for generating documents. But then I came up with, you know, there's got to be a better way of doing that, and that is this module called XmlEx. So it is, again, it's a DSL for XML, which will replace some of this stuff, right? So if you've got any application that uses XML and you need to generate an XML document, you know, and a lot of that is conditional. So if you're just generating a fairly static XML file, you wouldn't need to use this tool at all. But if you need to generate, you know, an XML document that looks like that, rather than having code that looks like that, yeah, you've got this nice kind of DSL, you know, where we're defining a document, we're defining namespaces, and we're giving prefixes, and then you just create your nested XML sections as you would normally. Zoom in a bit more on that. Yeah. So it's kind of a pseudo DSL. Got XML element. It's just a command, and then we've got a script block, and obviously you can nest all of these elements, and this will build up your XML document. Yeah. You set attributes. You don't have to worry about, you know, the namespace is all inherit, so there's none of this prefix. So this will generate, we've got prefix W, it's going to prefix all of the elements and attributes, and everything's going to filter down. Yeah. So I'll just give you a quick demo, right? Fairly straightforward. Example 1. Yeah. So I think this is the one, this is the example that's actually up on the website. So we're importing the module, and then we're going to create an XML document. We're going to store it in a variable. This is going to be an actual .NET XML document object that we can then do some stuff with, right? So let's just not worry about that for the time being. So if I just run this, so we do have a verbose login, please, Daniel. So you can see what's going on. We're adding the namespaces, creating a document. If I was to look in there, I've got a standard document which I can now navigate. You know, there's my namespaces and all my prefixes and stuff, and then you know, I can just work with it like I do a normal XML document within PowerShell. Yeah. There is also included in the module format XmlEx, which will actually output it in a nice visual format rather than doing the standard outer XML type stuff. Yeah. So just formats it a bit more nicely. Yeah. So there's one example, fairly straightforward. Just add in all your elements, all your attributes that you need, and then just keep nesting and nesting, and then you can export it out. If I was to look at some other examples, so not just creating documents, but you can also use XmlEx to take an existing document if you need to insert a node or a whole load of stuff at certain points within that document. If you can locate the element using XPath or whatever, you can then add stuff onto it as well. So here, is, what we normally do within PowerShell from an XML perspective. We need to generate an XML document. Here's my here string. So I'm generating an XML document, and then you can see that I'm going to pick the document root element here, and I'm going to append an XML element, which is going to have another nested XML element and then a text node inside it as well. So we can take an existing document and add it in. So if you imagine from a Word documentation perspective, we've got a whole load of nested XML elements that need to be put in. And within here, we can have our if, then, else's and switch statements and all sorts. So you can nest PowerShell code within here. So you could have if whatever variable, then add in the XML text node. So you can mix and match PowerShell code within this XML document as well. So just take that out. So if I run this, it's going to create an XML document. It's going to add some nodes into it. So you can see here's my appended element. That's coming out. Obviously, I'll not output that into a text node. Oh, it's a sub node of that, so yeah, it's probably not a good example of that one. So you can append stuff to existing documents. What are we doing here? Again, we're just adding in, creating a document with just an XML declaration, and then we can add in, create a new root element called root element and text node and stuff. So just generating that. So that's it really. If you've got any system that uses XML, obviously everything's on JSON now or YAML. Of course, nobody's got any system that's older than 3 years that we need to support. So yeah, if you need to automate any of this stuff, it's just I've used this all over the place. Internally, just for other stuff. Generating unattended XML files based on requirements and that sort of stuff for unattended installations. Anyone use config manager? I'm sure that uses the odd XML file or two. That's it. It's up on GitHub. It's up in the gallery if you need to generate any XML documentation. There you go.
Any questions?
Yes, not long. A couple of days. Yeah. I had all the experience doing the whole DSL type stuff with Scribo though, right? So from setting it all up. Yeah, particularly all the XML namespaces. So I know more about XML now than I ever wanted to know, and Word documents. And ironically, I wrote that not for me. So it's just the way life is. When you volunteer for something, don't worry, I'll show you. I'll give you an example. And then before you know it, you end up, yeah. Now I just see JSON when I go to bed, having dealt with ARM templates. Same difference. That's it. Cool. Thank you.
Thank you.